Right now on the National Weather Desk, tracking Lee. The hurricane
Hi, 123, 123.
Right now on the National Weather Desk, tracking Lee. The hurricane is now a monster Category 5 storm. Its exact path still uncertain.
This is like the 9th most potent storm that we've ever seen here.
We'll also look back on hurricane history, from the rare storms to make landfall in New England to the 2017 season that featured multiple major storms. Also, a look at how school systems across the country are dealing with the record heat.
Just a couple of hours of cooling time is really all we need to survive.
How much wind does it take to move certain objects? It all comes down to math.
Well, there's a handy little formula that you can use to compute it yourself.
And the new methods some orchards are using to make sure apples are ready to eat.
To reflect that direct sunlight so that they don't sunburn.
From our nation's capital, this is the National Weather Desk.
Good morning and welcome to the National Weather Desk. I'm meteorologist Matt Ritter. Hurricane Lee is now a powerful Category 5 storm, the first to be that strong since Ian of last year. Lee now has maximum sustained winds of 165 miles per hour, and the question this morning remains, where will Lee's track take it as it approaches the United States? Meteorologist Brian Vandegraff is tracking Lee for us this morning. Brian, what's the latest from the Hurricane Center?
Well, I'll give you the very latest here, Matt, as we get you going. 165 miles per hour, as you said, sustained, but gusts to 200. This thing just blew up in the last 24 hours. Hurricane hunters are out flying through it right now, moving to the west-northwest at about 14 miles per hour. It is making this trek that'll bring it just north of the Leeward Islands and down through the Caribbean over towards north side of Puerto Rico, north of Dominican Republic, and just to the east of the Bahamas. All guidance indicates that it's going to make a turn to the north and work its way up the eastern seaboard. How close it gets to the eastern seaboard, we're watching right now. The closest it gets to land seems to be up towards the New England area, but still many days between now and then. The biggest concern would be dangerous rips, currents, and dangerous surf up and down the eastern seaboard. Matt?
As Brian said, some models suggest Lee could, and we stress could, impact New England. And if that happens, it would be quite unusual. But as meteorologist Ryan Munn says, if history is a guide, the area could be due for one.
Hurricane season in the Atlantic Basin starts on June 1st. However, it peaks around this time of the year in early to mid-September. Since 1900, there have been 9 Category 1 hurricanes or stronger to make direct landfall in some portion of the New England coastline. Here's a look at Hurricane Bob, which was the last hurricane to make landfall in New England in Newport, Rhode Island as a Category 2 hurricane with sustained winds of nearly 100 miles per hour. It has been quite a while since the last hurricane that made direct landfall in Maine, and that hurricane, Hurricane Gerda, back in 1969, and it made landfall in Eastport, Maine as a Category 1 hurricane with sustained winds of nearly 80 miles per hour. If you include tropical storms, there have been several more tropical systems that have made landfall in New England since 1900, 25 to be exact.
And over in the Pacific, Hurricane Hova is spinning about 680 miles southwest of Cabo San Lucas. While it's not a threat to land, the storm did do something so unusual, it warrants an explanation. Here's meteorologist Ryan Mirando.
Here in the Atlantic are at the statistical peak of hurricane season. Things in the Pacific are also pretty active. This is Hova. Check out the satellite loop over the past few days. It rapidly exploded in intensity from the low end of a tropical storm with winds of about 70 miles per hour to a massive Category 5 storm of 160 miles per hour. It went from 90 miles per hour difference in just 24 hours, and that's pretty rare for storms to do. Now, since we've been keeping records of these storms in the eastern Pacific off the coast of Mexico, there's been about 12 of them that have made it to Category 5 status, but none have really made this big intensity jump like Hova has done. Some of the bigger storms, though, Marie in 2014 and Linda in 97, they went from tropical storm force winds to Category 4 in 24 hours, but none have really made that massive jump that Hova did. Now, just as fast as Hova formed, it looks to also dissipate as it moves into a worse environment for intensification, and also some cooler ocean waters as it stays out in the open waters of the Pacific.
Now back to the Atlantic. The 2017 hurricane season was historic. It featured 6 major hurricanes, including the first 2 major hurricanes, Harvey and Irma, to hit the continental U.S. in 12 years. But as meteorologist Emily Gracie explained, something rather unusual happened too.
The 2017 hurricane season was historic. It featured 6 major hurricanes, including the first 2 major hurricanes, Harvey and Irma, to hit the continental U.S. in 12 years. On September 8th of that year, something very unusual happened. 3 simultaneous hurricanes spinning all at once. Katia on the left in the Gulf, the massive Category 5 Irma in the middle, and Jose on the right. At the time of this image, all 3 storms were threatening land. Irma would cause widespread destruction on many Caribbean islands as well as Florida. Later that same month, Hurricane Maria, another Category 5, also devastated many islands, including Puerto Rico.
The dangerous heat of the summer of 2023 just won't quit. The heat wave continues for many today. More than 60 million Americans will be under heat advisories today from Texas to New England. This comes a day after more than 60 cities set record high temperatures yesterday. Students in Massachusetts aren't used to being in class when temperatures are in the upper 90s. Many schools in Boston now have air conditioning, but that's not the case in the rest of the state. Several schools without air conditioning are either closed or are closing early. And in New Jersey, students at Rutgers University moved into dorms this week that are not air conditioned. They say they are using multiple fans to try and keep cool, but it doesn't always work. Well, severe storms moved through the mid-Atlantic region yesterday. Our station's helicopter in Washington, D.C. took this fantastic shot of downpours near Dulles Airport in Virginia. The storms also produced hail and damaging winds. Well, the advent of smartphones means urgent weather alerts are now just a notification away. That wasn't the case in 1998 when severe storms moved into the Syracuse region, leaving 3 people dead amid the destruction. But as Matt Mulcahy reports, thanks to technology, things are now very different.
It changed my thinking about a lot of different things.
Meteorologist Josh Kozlowski was days away from starting his sophomore year of high school the night the storm hit.
And there's no power, there's no internet, you're just living life. It makes you think. You take for granted every single day we have now portable computers in our pockets that we check every minute or so, a couple minutes, linked up to our friends and family.
In the late 90s, the emergency weather alert sent to your cell phone didn't exist. The only way for anyone to hear the Labor Day storm was coming was television and radio.
Even today, 25 years later, even though you've got the mobile phones, it's tough to alert people on an actual severe weather event.
Former CNY Central Chief Meteorologist Wayne Mahar was forecasting the night of the storm, now known as a derecho for its intense, fast-moving, straight line of winds. Meteorologist Peter Hall was also at CNY Central hours before the storm came off Lake Ontario. He says today we have two big advantages that could have saved lives back then.
Well, back in 2012, 2013, something called dual pole radar was upgraded to all the National Weather Service radars across the country. What does this mean? Well, you can actually see debris inside clouds. That would be indicative of a tornado. When you combine the fact that cell phone alerts will go off, that we have better technology, better computer models, there's at least going to be a larger lead time to some of this, hopefully, so that the loss of life might hopefully be lower.
These are photos that I remember very well.
Like the obsolete camera that took them, old technology has made way for new, and it helps meteorologists keep us a little safer.
When neighbors are interviewed after a storm is, I quote, "I never knew it was going to be this bad. I didn't think this was going to be like this." Think about how bad this damage was, and it could certainly happen again in the future. And I don't ever want somebody to think this is one-time fluke event. This will never happen again. We'll never see storms of this caliber. Yes, we could. Yes, we could.
Hong Kong is underwater this morning, paralyzed by the heaviest rainfall there since 1884. That's 1884. Metro stations are underwater, drivers were trapped on roads, and people have been urged to stay home. More than 6 inches of rain fell in just 1 hour from 11 p.m. Thursday until midnight. As some parts of the city reportedly saw nearly 20 inches of rain in 24 hours. And in Greece, more than 1,800 people have been rescued from severe flooding. The high water turned many villages into virtual lakes. Many people are still trapped in their homes, and some parts of the country have seen more than 6 feet of rain. And coming up on the National Weather Desk, we'll find out how meteorologists are able to determine wind strength and speed.
I'm meteorologist Charlie Lopresti with Look at the Northeast. We're tracking more heat and humidity in the Northeast today. We'll add in a greater risk for strong to severe thunderstorms, and that will be during the afternoon and evening. We're tracking developing sun today. Areas that start with some fog. Look for a lot of hazy sunshine. By midday, we have a lot of hazy sun with temps in the 80s and low 90s. Here comes that chance for showers and storms. Damaging wind and hail will be the primary threats in any strong to severe storms that get going. Another round of showers and thunderstorms is expected on Saturday.
I'm meteorologist Jonathan Myers, and here's a look at the Mid-Atlantic region. Starting our morning with mild and muggy conditions. Our latest weather maker, it's a cold front. It's going to be slung over the 95 corridor, and that's going to fire up some showers and thunderstorms as we head into the afternoon. Some of those may be strong or severe. Another hot day with a lot of highs in the 90s for the metro areas, but cooler weather out to the west will get here for the weekend. That's the scene here.
I'm meteorologist Vitas Reed. Here's a look at your southeast forecast highs for the day. Looking at 83 in Nashville, 86 in Atlanta, 93 in Raleigh, still hot there, 90 in Jacksonville, 87 Tampa, 91 in West Palm. Looks like we're going to continue to see some sun and clouds, but we have a little frontal boundary that's dipping down over parts of the Mississippi Delta. Looks like there'll be some showers and thunderstorms there. A little bit of activity moving back in over parts of Florida with afternoon showers and thunderstorms.
watching the National Weather Desk.
A few minutes ago, we looked at the impact this week's heat wave is having on schools in the Northeast, but it's also an issue in the Great Lakes region, where late summer heat is even more unusual. Lexi Schroeder has details.
In Milwaukee, students were dismissed early because of the extreme heat.
Higher temperatures impair learning, and this is tested by students taking standardized tests.
Jonathan Patz is the John P. Holton Chair of Health and the Environment at UW-Madison.
I don't know the threshold above which temperatures are, really that much more impactful, but these are studies done in places where the temperature is uncomfortable or there's no air conditioning.
Not all of Milwaukee's district buildings have air conditioning. Lack of air conditioning in some of the buildings has been a long-standing challenge for a few weeks out of each school year.
It's absolutely essential, right? A critical means of cooling. Our bodies are remarkably resilient, and just a couple of hours of cooling time is really all we need to survive. We'll be miserable, but you won't die.
The district provided some tips for parents and students when preparing for the heat. All students should carry a full water bottle to and from school. Dress for the weather by wearing lightweight and light-colored fabrics. Outdoor recesses or other outdoor activities may be limited as needed. And student athletics and activities practice times and locations may be changed in response to the heat.
Meteorologists often talk about how much water it takes to lift a car, but we talk less often about how much wind is needed to move objects. Well, just like everything else, there's a math formula for that. Meteorologist Violet Skyborough explains.
Well, there's a handy little formula that you can use to compute it yourself, as long as you know the weight and the area of the object. So the formula is the square root of 195 times the weight divided by the area. So let's go over a few examples, starting with your common maple leaf. Let's say it has a weight of 0.002 pounds and an area of 0.04 square feet. Putting that into the formula, it takes a wind of about 3 miles per hour to blow that leaf around. Now looking at, let's say, your average trash can. It weighs about 37 pounds with an area of about 9 square feet. That takes about 28 miles per hour to push that laterally. Looking at a common average person, let's say they weigh about 175 pounds with 7.7 square feet of area. That takes about 67 miles per hour to move a person, which is the same level as, let's say, severe wind gusts from a damaging thunderstorm. That can not only move a person, but can also cause damage to housing and even some trees down as well. Now let's look at a car that's parked, not driving. So how much wind does it take to actually move a car when it's at standstill? Let's say it has a weight of 2,800 pounds with an area of 69 square feet. Putting that into the formula, it takes about 90 miles per hour to move a car, which is usually with straight-line wind gusts from a line of thunderstorms, maybe a hurricane, even a tornado, some very potent weather systems you would need to be able to move a car like that with 90 miles per hour.
Well, September marks the start of apple season across much of the country. In Michigan, some orchards are trying a new method to make sure the apples are ready on the trees by picking time. Meteorologist Heather Bricka explains.
Mother Nature is hard to control, especially when growing crops. But some orchards have a new way to guarantee the fruits of their labor ripen evenly.
We're trying to get as much reflected light as possible. We've got big white fabric out in the rows to bounce that sunlight back up in the tree, really color the underside and the bottom of the apple so that they'll be redder sooner.
It's one large white plastic blanket that lays across the orchard ground, so the lower fruit ripens at the same rate as the higher fruit.
It's a plastic, it's reusable, so that we can use this for the next several years. We'll roll it out, roll it up, and I'm actually using it in peaches and a few other crops too, which makes it really exciting.
King Orchards also put sunscreen on these Honeycrisp to protect them from the hot weather this week.
Every time I've got to put out a little bit of clay on them to reflect that direct sunlight so that they don't sunburn, because it can actually hurt the flesh underneath the skin and the top of the skin with too much direct sunlight.
Honeycrisps aren't ready yet, but the Ginger Golds, Sanzas, and Zesters are all ready now.
We are still growing, all right? They're not quite ready. We're a week and a half, 2 weeks out. There are some early Honeycrisps that are good right now, but your standard Honeycrisp, you can see is still coloring and it's coming along very nicely. Right now, they're just trying to soak up all the sun they can, get that beautiful red color.
According to the USDA, last year, Michigan harvested a record 32.38 million bushels of apples, which is well over the annual average of 24 million bushels.
This year is again another massive crop of apples. Everything loaded up with apples, and it's been dry, so we're running the water, we've been feeding them the compost, and trying to keep these trees healthy through this drought.
Goose hunting is popular in portions of the Midwest, and the early season for Canada geese is underway. Eric Peterson spoke to an expert about how the weather is allowing hunters to get out earlier this season.
With 60% more Canada geese in the field than the long-term average, the Department of Natural Resources says hopes are high for the early goose hunting season.
Everybody's been fishing and boating and ATVing and hiking and camping throughout the summer, and this gives them an opportunity to kind of get out a little earlier.
DNR Conservation Warden Jimmy Moore says before heading out, people need to know where they may and may not hunt.
When it comes to hunting waterfowl, especially on the bay, with all the private land that's around the bay, they do have to be in the water. If they're going to be on the land, they'd have to have consent from the local landowner to be there. Once a bird is harvested, you want to make sure that you immediately retrieve that downed animal. If it ends up on private property, you have to get consent from that landowner to go out there and retrieve it.
The early goose season started last Friday with a daily bag limit of 5. At Barkhausen Waterfowl Preserve in Swamico, Program and Natural Resource Manager Jason Petrella says creating habitat has an impact.
Well, especially this year being such a dry summer, this particular wetland was almost just about mud. So in this particular case, and we do this every fall, we have a high capacity well. We'll actually pump water into this wetland complex, like a giant bathtub, and we'll just flood that up starting now. So by the time migration really picks up, later in September, this thing's well flooded, and all that green vegetation that's growing out there, well, that'll be flooded at that time, and that's really good food for all those migrating waterfowl coming through later.
Meanwhile, the early campaign continues. Wardens say hunters need to brush up on their bird identification.
And to make sure that the species that they're going to harvest is the one they intend to harvest. There are a lot of species that are huntable that are not open right now.
We're going to take a short break now, but first we'll take some flight over Washington's Puget Sound.
Good Friday morning, everyone. I'm meteorologist Andrew Buck-Michael taking a look at the weather that you can expect across the Midwest for today and your weekend. Got a little bit of light rain across the Ohio Valley, but a lot of the Midwest dealing with a mix of sun and clouds for the weekend. Heading into your Saturday, got some rain moving its way into the northern plains there, and temperatures running a little cooler than normal for most of the Midwest. That rain continues to drift its way to the south and east as we head into Sunday. And look at that, highs in the 60s to the north.
Good morning, I'm meteorologist Alex Garcia. Here's a look at your regional weather. We're starting off a little warm and a little humid all the way from Texas, all the way back up into Oklahoma. But take a look at that Amarillo temperature at 68 degrees. Arkansas coming in at about 70. You got a little bit of a system going through. You'll see a nice little mesoscale system dive down through Louisiana with some rain. Everybody else looks like it's going to stay pretty dry and pretty hot. I'm meteorologist Alex Garcia. That's a look at your regional weather.
Well, hi there, everybody. TGIF. I'm meteorologist Shannon O'Donnell. This Friday out west continues to look extremely quiet. Most of the summer season, we've been stuck in the fog around the Golden Gate Bridge. Highs just in the upper 60s later today in the city by the bay versus 103 out of Vegas and 110 in Phoenix. Perfect in the Pacific Northwest with 70s in Spokane. Same goes for Seattle and Portland. Next weather maker, just a few showers moving through Montana. And that's the scene from here.
You are watching the National Weather Desk.
Some say the most wonderful time of the year starts with football season. Meteorologist Katie Morgan has this weekend's football forecasts.
Let's talk about some of our games of the week, and we're going to start out in Boulder, Colorado. We've got Nebraska in town taking on Colorado, temperature 80 with plenty of sunshine for the day. Then we head to Ann Arbor, Michigan, where UNLV will be in town taking on Michigan here with temperatures in the low 70s. And big game in Alabama, Tuscaloosa to be exact, Texas taking on Alabama. We will find temperatures in those 80s with a mix of clouds and sunshine early on for the game. As far as our NFL games of the week, week one, we're ready to go. Packers in town taking on the Bears in Chicago. Temperature around 72 with plenty of sunshine. May run into a few thunderstorms here, isolated at best for the Raiders. Broncos game with temperatures hovering in those upper 70s. And heading out to Massachusetts, Foxborough. Eagles in town taking on the Patriots with temperatures hovering right around 80.
Thank you for joining us. Monday on the National Weather Desk, we'll look at the best ways you can take to protect your pets during severe weather events. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you back here on Monday.